One of the interesting quirks of the kinds of articles and the way that people often talk about artificial intelligence is that people often talk about it as if it were a person. And to some extent, that is an inevitable consequence of the very definition of AI. AI is about machines seeking to replicate the kinds of activities and tasks that would normally require a human. And so for that reason, when we talk about AI, we often talk about a computer thinking or understanding, seeing, hearing, learning. But of course, a machine is never really doing those things in the way that we really mean those words. And one of the problems with that is that when we start talking and thinking about AI in that way, it makes it feel like there's some kind of inevitability to what's going on technologically, as if this is something that technology is doing of its own accord rather than a set of human decisions. But AI is just a machine. A machine can't really think, it can't really learn, certainly not yet. And instead, the kinds of decisions that are going to be made about, for example, which jobs are lost and which jobs are preserved, or about how this particular machinery is going to be used, whether it's going to be used in adult social care, these are human decisions. And just as a printing press never actually killed anybody, unless perhaps it fell on them, so too an AI can't actually sack somebody. In the room here, I know we have a lot of managers and leaders. Can I ask you to put your hand up if you manage a team? That's fantastic. That looks like about 80% of the audience. And can I ask you to also put your hand up if you plan to be managing a team in about 10 years' time? Surprisingly, that's fewer of you, so I'm not sure what that means about our audience here today, but nonetheless, that certainly, in both cases, it's a majority of the audience. So what that means is, in direct terms, you will be making the decisions about how AI is used in your company or in your organisation, and you will be making the decision about what that means for people's jobs. Not necessarily that you'll be sacking people, although I'm sure that some of you will be, but instead a lot of you will be talking to the people in your teams about how they might be working with technology, how that might be changing the way their job looks, and also hopefully how that might be making them feel about who they are now and who they are when their job looks quite different. Leadership, I think, is always about getting the best out of people, and that means getting the best out of your team and getting the best out of yourself as well. And in order to get the best out of people, that means you need to have a fantastic understanding of the tools that are available to you, but also of the limitations of those tools. So when it comes to artificial intelligence, which is often discussed and increasingly understood, but perhaps not understood as well as it could be, that means not only understanding what AI is capable of, it also means understanding the limitations of AI and understanding the gaps that AI leaves. There are many gaps that are left by AI, but I think there are three important ones in particular that I will focus on over the next few minutes. The first is people. Now, the obvious way in which AI will leave people behind is the kind of displacement that will happen to jobs. And the choices we're going to make about which jobs we preserve, which jobs indeed we make a deliberate choice to conserve, to treat better, as Adair has just said, and which jobs are going to go, which jobs are going to change. The second category is tasks. What are the tasks where we are comfortable delegating them to an AI technology, to a machine, and what are the tasks where we want to preserve an element of humanity, even if we could choose not to? And finally, there's the question of skills. What are the kinds of skills that machines don't have or that they're not very good at? Some of them they might get better at, some of them they are never going to be good at, and what are we going to do as leaders to make sure that we are preserving in ourselves and in our teams the kinds of skills that are going to be critical? I'm going to start with people because this is where the change of AI is going to be felt most deeply and most personally. And I'm going to start by talking about a city, I should say, called Stockton. Stockton is a city in Northern California. It's about an hour and a half's drive inland from San Francisco. And it is one of the poorest cities in California. It has a population that's relatively young, that's very racially diverse. It has relatively low skill levels and high unemployment. It's exactly the kind of place where the impacts of AI are going to be most keenly felt on people, because most of its population are employed in some of the kinds of jobs that are easiest to automate. They're employed in things like manufacturing, construction, and transportation. But Stockton has one other really key element, and that is that they have a pretty dynamic and inspiring mayor. His photo is up there. His name is Michael Tubbs, and my team and I have been working with him and with the City of Stockton over the last year or so, talking about what AI might mean for Stockton and what it might mean for them to prepare. A few things I'll say about this mayor, because I think he provides a fantastic example of what leadership can look like in the age of AI, and the kinds of things that an individual can do to try and make sure that the gaps left by AI, the people who may be forgotten by AI, are not forgotten and have an opportunity to prepare now for what's coming. First thing I'll say about Michael Tubbs is that he's 28 years old. Now, I'm one of the younger speakers here today, and Michael Tubbs is significantly younger than me. So he's one of those people who is intimidatingly brilliant and is achieving great things at a very young age. He's also very ambitious, and something that he's done over the past couple of years is raise enough private funds through various investors who are interested in this subject, who are interested in what it looks like to protect the people left behind by AI. He has raised enough money that he is developing, in fact, it started last month, the first universal basic income trial in the United States. So last month, 130 households across Stockton received a cheque in the mail for $500 US, so that's about 700 Australian dollars. They will receive that cheque every month for the next 18 months. They have been chosen almost randomly in that they have to be in a postcode that is below the median income, but so long as they live in that postcode, they could be the wealthiest household in that postcode. They've been chosen through a randomised technology. And what the mayor really hopes, and what the people behind this program really hope, is that that money will be used in particular to help the people who are getting it, not necessarily to use for leisure, although I'm sure some of it will be used for leisure, but he believes that a lot of that money can be used for training and for retraining. One of the challenges in a city like Stockton, when we think about what it looks like to retrain people in the age of AI, is that even when training looks like it's free, it's not free. So one of the women that I met when we were in Stockton last August is a woman who works with displaced young people who are trying to find jobs. And she says that even when training is free, the uniforms might not be free, or the childcare might not be free, or the transportation to get someone to the place where they're going to be trained might not be free. So although $500 might not sound like an awful lot, it might be just enough to make training possible, or to make retraining possible, or to buy someone a little bit of time, a little bit of emotional energy to start planning for the future. Understanding AI and having a little bit of space, whether that's through time or whether that's through a little bit of money, helps to enable the preparation that is so important as people contemplate the changes that are ahead. And the other thing that Michael Tubbs is doing in Stockton is he's using his position as mayor. It helps that he's young and dynamic. That means that he has a kind of celebrity status in Stockton. And he is using his position as mayor to talk to people about what automation means, about what kinds of jobs are likely to be at risk, and what that might mean for people as individuals. And it's this preparation that makes me so passionate about what I'm starting to call AI literacy. That is, having as many people as possible, whether that's being trained by government, in schools, in universities, in organisations, as many people as possible understand some of the basics behind AI. It doesn't mean that we need to have everyone learning to code. It certainly doesn't mean that we all need to know what it looks like to train an algorithm. But I think everybody needs to know, what is AI? How does it think, and how does it use data? How does it process information? And therefore, what is it good at? Of course, what is it not good at? And then there's the moral question about what should AI never be used for. These are social decisions. They're decisions about whether a robot should be used in certain areas of human life that we might think are just too sacred to automate. But there can also be practical decisions about areas where the data is simply not good enough, or where the data might look as if it's good, but hide a whole bunch of biases that's going to mean that the AI that's used in that situation is never really going to be as good as we want it to be. The next component to talk about is tasks. And here again, it's critical to know enough about AI to make really thoughtful decisions about how it should be used and how it shouldn't be used. Something that I'm expecting to shift over the next few years is that at the moment, companies, and especially technology companies, certainly consulting companies, they're advertising to me every time I go through an airport, they will show off to their customers, their potential clients, about how they are using AI. The change that I am expecting is, I think, more and more companies and organisations will be showing off about how they are not using AI. I think it will be something to be proud of, to say, this particular decision in our organisation is made by people. I think that's something that more and more of us are going to be craving as we want to understand how decisions are being made. A leader has always faced the question of who is best in an organisation to do a particular task. Now that means that sometimes the answer is, I'll do it myself. And I know we have a room full of leaders and managers, and so you'll all be familiar with that tension of thinking, well, it would be slightly quicker, might be slightly better if I do it myself, but actually I think this is a task that needs to be delegated, either because I can't possibly do it, or because someone else needs to learn how to do it, or because it sets an important example. The age of AI gives another interesting component to this question. Is this a task that can or should be delegated to an AI program? And again, the fact that the AI program is the fastest or the cheapest does not mean that it should necessarily be delegated to that AI program. As I've said, technology changes the way we feel, the way we live, the way we work, but it is not the technology itself that's making those changes. It is human decisions about how that technology is used. One example is to think about an aeroplane, and certainly as an Australian who spends a lot of time in the United Kingdom and flying back and forth, I'm very familiar with the very reassuring announcement that you get on an aeroplane. Good morning, we're cruising at around 9,000 feet. It's something that makes me feel good. I'm a little bit of a nervous flyer, and hearing that over the loudspeaker system makes me feel really good. Now, that plane is being flown most of the time by autopilot, and yet there is somewhere between 2 and 4 pilots on every plane. And that is not because we need 4 pilots on every plane. It's because we've made the decision as humans that we want that security, and also that it makes us feel good. And these are the kinds of decisions that we are going to be asked to make more and more about all aspects of life. One example is our schools and the way that we teach our students. Increasingly, schools are being pitched the idea of giving children an iPad that can personalise their lessons for them. Now, if we take this to the extreme example, this might mean schools full of children in which we might be able to just put 100 kids of different ages in a room. If they're all being taught on iPads, they probably don't need a teacher. They can just have a security guard to make sure they don't kill each other. And there you have 100 children, all of whom are doing exactly what we've been told is good for them. Maybe they're learning to code, maybe they're learning about robotics, maybe they're learning STEM. They're getting individual programmed work. And yet I find that a pretty grotesque concept, and I think that most of you probably do too. So the decision to have a human teacher in front of a classroom of hopefully not 100 students is one that we can make. It's one that our governments can make. It's one that our schools can make. And when we're choosing a school, we might choose a school that uses a little less technology than that. So even if AI would be good at this task, should you use it? Here are 6 questions to ask yourself when you're contemplating that question as a leader. The first question is about data. Maybe you have the data. Are you sure the data is complete? Are you sure it's reliable and does not contain its own biases? And also, are you confident that the people who gave you that data, because a lot of data is personal data, are you confident that they know you have it and they know how you intend to use it and they're comfortable with how you intend to use it? This is where Facebook went wrong. Most of us knew that Facebook had our data. What we have felt increasingly uncomfortable about is how it's being used and the fact that it's being used in unexpected ways. Systems for interpretation goes back to Alan's terrific talk and the first golden rule that he described proposing for AI. And that is, you might have a technology that's proposing a certain outcome or that's suggesting a certain answer, but do you have a human who is interpreting that to make sure that it makes sense, to make sure that this is not an edge case? Third is the outside view, the kind of creepy factor. So to quote another of Alan's examples, he spoke about the use of IVF to have a constant camera monitoring the developing embryo, which sounds fantastic. Adair also mentioned that I have a 6-week-old baby in the conference here today who has been behaving remarkably well. Either that or she's left screaming, I can't quite tell. But what I would not have wanted is to have a camera on me while I was giving birth to check that was all going okay. That's where AI veers into creepy. So I think sometimes people get so excited about the potential for a technology that they forget to think, what do my clients, my customers, my investors think about the use of AI for this purpose? I might think it's fine, even my own team might think it's fine because they understand it, but it needs to go through the creepy check. Relationships. How do the people in my organisation feel about this, and how does this change their relationship to one another? Because if you're only saving a little bit of money, but you're harming the harmony of your organisation, it might not be worth it. And similarly, job satisfaction. Where AI is used to automate part of your job that you don't particularly enjoy, it's something wonderful. If it is taking away the part of your job that gives you the most satisfaction, then again, it might not be worth using in that way, because it is so important, as we all know, to have our team members enjoy their job and feel a sense of satisfaction and a sense of progress from what they're doing. And then there's the personal touch. Is this one of the areas where having an individual human help a person is in itself important, even if it could be automated? So for example, when I negotiated my checkout this afternoon with the Sofitel, it was really nice that I could talk to a human on the desk who spotted the baby and said, yeah, you can check out a little later. Would a machine have done that? I doubt it would have, partly because it wouldn't have spotted the baby, and it probably wouldn't have known what it means to have a 6-week-old baby and what that means for changing and for breastfeeding and all those kinds of things that a human instinctively understands as soon as they see the baby. And finally, there's skills, which I'm going to do very quickly because I'm starting to go over time. There are human skills that machines aren't very good at. And one of the wonderful things about these sets of skills is they're also the kinds of skills that most define our humanity. They're questions about creativity and imagination, some of the kinds of examples that Tanya was using this morning. They're about how we get on with one another and how we engage with the world. These are the kinds of things that robots aren't good at, and frankly, we wouldn't want robots to be good at it. These are also the kinds of skills that we develop laboriously over many, many years of childhood development as we're stacking those blocks. And these are also the kinds of skills that a leader can actively develop in themselves as well as in their teams. Part of what's exciting about being a leader in a time like this is that periods of complexity, periods of uncertainty, and periods of serious change that happen very quickly are also some of the times in which the greatest leaders are revealed, because this is a real challenge for all of us as we're leading organisations and as we are leading teams. But it's also an opportunity to prove just how good humans are at exactly those skills that are being left for us by robots and that we should be embracing and enjoying and bringing to our organisations in full force. Thank you.